All right. It is my pleasure to introduce Kevin Williams to share his job search story and share insights that'll be helpful to all of you. Kevin, it's all you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. First, for those that are new, I just say, I'm Kevin Williams. I've been around here for a little bit. I want to, first of all, thank Steve for letting me come into this group and be a part of this. I actually came into this group out of a recommendation from somebody that I know and Steve knows, and so I think I've been a little bit, maybe Steve, different member than others here. But it's been a great opportunity for me to be here. I have spent my entire career in procurement and supply chain, category management, strategic sourcing areas. I started my first job out of college as a buyer role and then quickly moved into management procurement roles, working for Intel, and then Becton Dickinson, and Varian Medical Systems, SAP Ariba, and then most recently with Thermo Fisher Scientific. Um, my last role was Senior Director of Supplier and Category Excellence at Thermo Fisher Scientific, which I was responsible for their category management process, their supplier relationship management process, and their supplier risk process. And it quite ironic because the that was kind of like my ultimate role that I wanted to get into after being in procurement for 25, almost 30 years, was that specific role. And you know, all the jobs that I had mostly received through my career were jobs that came to me. I didn't necessarily go out and find them. So um one of the things that was interesting about my role at Thermo Fisher was that I went there because the CPO that I worked for 10 years at Becton Dickinson had moved to Thermo Fisher. So I went over there in that role, and ironically enough, the last role that I took there, which I just described a minute ago, when I interviewed for that role, he was still the CPO. When I got into role, they had moved him to somewhere else and brought in a new chief procurement officer. So I've spent the last couple of years kind of banging heads with leadership around what what I thought I was hired to do and what I was trying to accomplish versus what they thought I should be doing. Um, Ultimately, just a lot of change over the last couple of years with leadership, and so on September 19th, they let me go. And over the last few weeks, the Center of Excellence team that I was a part of, I think three or four more of those people have been let go. So they're definitely going a different direction. So, and I've been in this group for a few months now. And like I said before, I'd never really had to try really hard for the jobs that I got. So when I came into this situation and now being 58 years old in a lot different situation than in the past when I was looking for a job, I found this really, really complex and really difficult. This has been a really, really hard journey for me. Um, I look back at some of the people that have talked as they've gotten jobs, and I felt very similar to them. Um, your job and your work becomes kind of your identity and who you are. And even though I think that's overly inflated, it's true. Just it really became a lot of who I was because of the job that I had. Um, so I've been scrambling ever since. I had a severance that lasted through about the end of November. Um, I found it very difficult to land. Like it seems like I've been having four or five interviews a day, but to try to get to that very end stage has been very difficult, at least to the point of getting the job. I think I've had probably 10 or 15 jobs that I've interviewed for that I've gotten through six, seven, eight, nine interviews down to the very end, and then I'm usually not the one chosen. And back to Rick's comment before, um, my age, like you, was probably not helping me. Um, I was looking at a sheet the other day. I have applied for and built custom tailored resumes for over 90 jobs since I started this process. Um, I have networked across my entire network of people that I know. Um, but it's still been really difficult. But I I did receive an offer, and a little felt, Steve, like this was maybe a little bit premature coming in and doing this today because of the travel and the training that I was committed to doing last week was just more of a consulting role. I haven't been able to complete all the drug screening stuff, but I'm actually going to do that today. So hopefully everything still lines up and this job works out. I am going to continue to interview. I actually have two more interviews today, and I have like four or five more interviews scheduled for the rest of this week. Because the job offer that I got was a role that was probably a level or two below the role that I was working, and the money is good, but a little bit less than what I had before. So the actually the role too is actually interesting. The company wants me to come and manage all their supplier risk, which is something that I did at my last company, but it was only one part of what I did. So they want me to basically go do that for them full time, which will be, I think, an interesting role. In talking to the hire manager, the one thing he did tell me was he was worried that I was going to get bored doing that for him. I assured him that that would not be the case. Um, One of the things I wanted to pass on that was actually interesting about the role that I did get the offer for, I was not expecting it. Um, I had been interviewing for a lot of roles and I was in various stages of a lot of the roles. For this particular company, I'd only interviewed three or four times, which is odd because most of the companies I've been interviewing for, I've literally interviewed with eight, nine, and 10 people by the time they make a decision. So I was quite surprised actually when I got the call that they were sending me an offer. But one of the things that I did wanted to share here was they did tell me it came down to me and one other person, and one of the reasons they went with me was because of um, the recommendation that came from another individual about me for this specific role. And let me just tell you the story there a little bit. As I mentioned before, I built a supplier risk program at my previous company. And in the process, I worked with several third-party companies to do that. And one in particular individual I worked with quite a bit to try to get a bunch of supplier financial risk put into a system that we were working on. And him and I became pretty good friends in the process. When he found out that I was let go from Thermo Fisher, he called me and said, "Hey, I heard you were no longer there." I was shocked and surprised. What's going on? What can I do to help? And I was so frustrated at the time that he called me that I had been let go that I really kind of waffled back and forth on whether I wanted to share with him my story and have him help me. But I thought, not you can't lose, right? So I went through that process and he said, "Hey, I think I know a company that's going to be hiring a supplier risk. Would you be interested? A supplier risk role?" And I said, for sure, obviously I'll be interested. And he's like, "They're in a big hurry." Well, this was back in probably mid-November timeframe. And it took them, from them being in a really hurry, they didn't contact me until December. Um, but it was in large part because of that connection and that referral that I had from him that helped me actually land the job. So the connections and the people as we've talked about a lot here, really help and really make a difference. So um, I don't have a start date yet. That's still trying to be negotiated. It's a little bit of a struggle because this company that I do some training for committed me for an additional 8 days of doing training for them in February and March. So I'm trying to kind of figure out how I combine all that together. But anyway, that Steve is basically kind of my story. And like I said, I'm continuing to interview to see if um, something different comes along that I feel like's better. But if not, I think this is a good opportunity.
Okay. Um, Big round of applause for that. I do have one quick question. I'm going to be the first person to ask questions. So tell us what you found to be the best way to customize your resume. I know you and I had talked one day, but as you were customize your resume, what methodology or what did you do to do that? Share if you would share that with everybody.
Yeah, so I think similar to what a lot of other people do here and others had talked about in the past, I found for me that what worked best was I had been using AI quite a bit in my previous role, but mostly I had to do it through my previous company's AI engine, which I found very frustrating. So I actually got a subscription to ChatGPT. And so I use ChatGPT and I also use JobRite. I did not get a subscription to JobRite, but I found that what I was able to do was just through their free site have enough credits to be able to look for jobs. And the most important jobs that I found, the ones that I felt like were the closest match to me, and the ones that I felt like I had the biggest chance or the best opportunity, I would actually build their resume in JobRite, and I would build a tailored resume in ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT, what I would do is I would go into ChatGPT and I would tell ChatGPT that I was applying for a job with this specific company, and I would ask it to give me information about the company. So it kind of establish, is it public? Is it private? What's the size? Then I would put the job description in, and then I would take three or four of my resumes that I felt like were the closest to that job, and add them in there as well, and then have ChatGPT build me a resume. And then, like I said, I would have JobRite do a resume for it if it was like a job that I really felt tied to. I felt it was a really good opportunity and a good match. Then I would take those two and sort of meld them together in one. Um, and that's basically how I would build them.
Perfect. Thanks. And maybe if everybody doesn't know about JobRite AI, that might be something that we make sure we cover. I think we cover a lot here, but sometimes not everybody knows that. So let's put the first person up here. The first person I'm going to put with you today for questions would be random Brian. I think. Well, hold on. Where did everybody go to? Hold on. I need somebody doing this for me.
Yep.
There we go. Do we have two of you? We have two of you, right?
I think so.
Okay. So,
No, I'm just,
Brian,
do you think age discrimination was a bit of, you went through interview processes multiple times to the very end. So that's kind of encouraging, but what was the difference between, you don't know what the other candidate is necessarily. So do you have any
Yeah.
ideas or guesses why you made it to the final and then they chose somebody else? That's
I don't know, Brian. It's hard to know. I think age discrimination is a big piece of it. If I look back, by the way, it's interesting because having worked for Thermo Fisher for over 5 years, and many of the people that I worked with there were people that I also worked with at Becton Dickinson for 10 years from 2002 to 2012. So they're pretty interrelated. Um, they did another round of layoffs a few weeks after they laid me off, and 90% of them are male, white, above 55.
yeah.
So that's difficult. As far as getting down to the final interviews, yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting. I've gone back to the companies and asked for feedback, and it's really frustrating because, most of the feedback that I'm getting is Like, now we thought you were great. It's just that when we got down to the final, we liked one better than the other. And probably 9 out of 10 of them have asked me if they can, would they be willing to keep my information? Would they Can they connect with me on LinkedIn because they feel like they may have a couple of more opportunities coming up later in the year that would be a good fit. So it's I don't know, it's really hard because I haven't got really any feedback that I could really even use.
Yeah. I find companies don't really ever want to share much. And then it's bittersweet. Can we still stay in touch? And in case our guy falls through, we want to hire you. It's like,
Yeah,
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 that's about all I had. Thanks for sharing.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Next up is Tommy.
Congratulations. I can't really think of any questions. I don't really have anything.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Tommy. Next up is Jason Green.
Mm, all right. Well, congratulations. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have any specific questions. I know it seems like it's been quite a while that you've been here. Um, and what is the new company like? What do they do?
Yeah, so the company's called TTM Electronics. So it's actually a technology company. They do a lot of printed circuit boards, RF, other products mainly for aerospace and defense.
And they're here in Utah.
No, no, it's a remote role. They have a small facility in Logan that they make printed circuit boards. Their headquarters is in Santa Ana, California. They've got a lot of manufacturing in upstate New York. So no, they're kind of a global company. And it's a remote role.
And do you live in Logan then?
No, no, I live in Riverton, just outside of Salt Lake
Oh.
area. Yeah.
So how are you going to negotiate and I guess that was part of what you were saying. You're still trying to work that out. That you're finishing up your contract work and then
Yeah. So we had a start date, which was actually today, but because I was in, but I accepted the offer on let's see, on the 19th. The offer came to me like on the 17th or the 18th. Or wait a second. The offer came, yeah, I don't remember though. It was like a little over a week ago, but I
right.
accepted it on a Friday and then I had to fly out on Monday. And so I think it was like Tuesday when I was in Columbus, Ohio, they actually sent me the information to go do the background and drug test. But the drug test is set up where you have to do it within 3 days. So I'm like, oh, so I had sent him a note saying, hey, I'm not going to be
I'm
able
out
to
of
do it
town.
because I won't be back. I won't be back until
Yeah.
Friday night. And so,
I could mail it to you, I guess, whatever you need.
yeah. So anyway, they came back to me and said, yeah, obviously we're not going to be able to get a start date by the 26th, but just let us know, we'll send you a new link to do all the drug tests and everything on Monday when you get back, which is the day. So I'm going to go do that this afternoon. So, I think it'll take a few days for them to get everything back, and then we'll have to figure out a start date. So, but I'm ready to start as soon as possible. Again, like I said, I'm trying to negotiate though with them that I can still maybe do some of this other training that I already committed to do. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a whirlwind week. So no wonder it's
Yeah,
hard to
it's been
remember what's
crazy,
going on.
obviously I get paid when I was doing the training last week, but I told my wife before I went out to that, it's like I've never worked so hard and not get paid. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, good luck and
Yeah,
Have
thanks. I
fun.
appreciate it.
Okay. Next up is Brett Hadley.
First of all, Kevin, congratulations, way to go. The question I have, you mentioned this was a remote. So I'm looking more of your opinion on this than actual facts. I don't think anyone really knows fully, but kind of weigh kind of your experience with applying for stuff that was purely remote, because with that you have much bigger candidate pool that you're going up against.
Yeah, so Brett, here's the thing I've found that's kind of interesting and tough is, and I've struggled with this my entire career, right? Is living here in Utah, trying to find the opportunities available for companies that are here
Hmm.
versus those that are, global national companies. And my entire career, I've tried to work for large companies that gave me bigger opportunities for pay and advancement, but I've had to scramble to find a way to make that work because I didn't want to move, right? So I was lucky enough when I worked for Becton Dickinson for 10 years that they actually had a manufacturing plant here. And so I reported to the corporate in New Jersey, but they let me office here in Sandy and then travel. Um, the same when I was at SAP Ariba. I mean, most of the people that I worked with at that point were remote. And then I got lucky because of the pandemic and with Thermo Fisher Scientific, because I joined there in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And so everybody they were hiring and everybody was working remote at the time, which then became a bit of a problem because now that I think was even another part of why I got laid off is they're trying to get as many people back in office. And
Mm.
they did actually have an office here a couple years ago and they got rid of it because nobody would go to it. Everyone wanted to work remote. So now they're trying to center everybody in different locations and I'm not at one of those locations. Um, so, the struggle is if you're trying to find a high level procurement role in Utah and make the same money that you can from one of these other, global companies is a struggle. Um, So yeah, I mean, some companies are more open to it, others are not. But then, like you said again, um, your candidate pool becomes very, very competitive on all these jobs. And like all these jobs I was mentioned before that I would get down to like the final round and then not get it were very large, 20 to 40 billion dollar companies, very large companies that are, searching all over. In fact, to this point, Brett, what I'll tell you something that's actually kind of funny is as I mentioned, I've been doing this category management training. Well, I was actually doing the training with another individual. And that other individual I was doing it with last week, as I was talking to them, I'd never met them personally. And her story is almost exactly the same as mine. She was working for Cardinal, doing the same role as me. She got let go. Um, I was having dinner with her the other night and we were talking about opportunities and roles. And probably four roles that I've applied for and got down to the final, she actually did as well. So, like, we're
Mm.
sitting there talking about, she lives in Florida. We're sitting there talking about all these opportunities. And she's like, "Hey, did you interview with ConMed?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how do you know about ConMed?" Well, yeah, I got down to the like last couple on that one as well. And she's like, "I'm actually consulting for them right now. I'm doing consulting work, but they wouldn't hire me." And she's like, "I don't know why." So, yeah, it's really tough. I went down the road with them. I went down the road with Smith and Nephew. I went down the road with Stryker. I went like all these different companies. And, like you said, you're not just competing on those with people in Utah, you're competing with everybody in the country. Those are on those remote roles.
Well, you're competing internationally also
In some of them, yes.
Yeah.
because there are a lot of North Korean and Russians that are able to get around the sanctions by getting jobs in the US. And I'm running into that as a programmer.
Wow.
Okay. Any
All
more?
right. Anyway, lastly, I know I said this again, but hey, Kevin, way to go. I'm really happy for you. Hopefully this works out really good for you. Congratulations again.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it. And good luck to you. I know you're in a similar supply chain, so hopefully something comes soon.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Next up is Kyle.
Um, the thought that I had for you, Kevin, is with all the customization and that you did for the resumes and all the AI utilization, everything like that. Do you feel like that got you in the door for jobs that you probably didn't have a shot at? Or do you think because the problem I'm having maybe is I'm putting out a lot of applications, having only a handful of interviews, but those are for ones that it's a really good fit. And I kind of think there's some value there. But I also understand that what I'm doing is, if you're thinking of it on the org chart, right, a long way down from what you're doing. So I don't know, and I've underutilized that, I guess, because I feel like it's going to land me the interview that's going to end up being a waste of everyone's time. So I've wondered if you felt like that was because ultimately the role you got was through a personal connection, not through any of that, right?
Yeah, it was through a connection, but it's interesting. I think as I went through the interviewing process with that company, I think the hiring manager was actually the only one who really had the connection.
Oh,
And so when I interviewed with I think three other people. Um, and so I think, my tailored resume helped me at least get the into the door for the first interview with like the recruiter,
yeah.
and then to the hiring manager, and then he knew when we had that connection with somebody else. But then I met with his boss and I met with a couple other people that were like presidents of different divisions, and I don't think that they knew. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I think the other thing I've seen and learned that now versus a few years ago, things have become so much more specialized as well. I used to be able to get into a lot of interviews with jobs or people come to me around category management. And if you were just a really good category manager, that people would hire you. It didn't really matter so much if you were an expert in one particular category or another category. Now it's like I see so many of the jobs come over and they want this what they call deep knowledge in this category for the last, 12 to 15 years experience. It's like, wow. I mean, you
But
know,
what about when all those people retire and we didn't hire anybody who didn't have 20 years experience first?
yeah.
It's
So
like, what are we
I
gonna
think
do?
the tailored resume for sure has helped, and like I'll give the same cautions that other people that have been down this road I've listened to before. You still have to be very careful because even with me putting three or four of my previous resumes into ChatGPT and the job description, sometimes it will come up with stuff that's just untruthful, right? It'll come out trying to tell you, it'll be
It'll
like got
embellish.
like 15 years experience in something when I really don't, right? So you still have to look through them, but there's no way that I would ever been able to build 90 plus tailored resumes and almost every one of those has a cover letter that's a custom tailored cover letter that went with them. I mean, to build all that stuff is just be impossible to do. But I found for me that AI has been really helpful, not to just custom and tailor it, but also my prep for all the interviews. I would use, AI to prep. In some of them, when I got to the higher levels and I was interviewing with presidents and executive presidents or whatever for different roles, I was actually using ChatGPT as well to get information about those people because many of those people have written articles or different things that are out there, and knowing that information before you get into into an interview is helpful. Just even if it doesn't come up, at least to have the background and know kind of, more detail about them. Um, so I don't know if I'm helping you or answering your question, Kyle, but I I do know that if I was just to try to use 4 or 5 resumes across all of those 90, it never would have probably worked very well.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, asked and answered. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Stan.
Congratulations, Kevin. Yeah, I know we've both been here for a while. I think you've been here longer than I have. I know it's very difficult. And related to that, do you have any tips on fighting the feeling of exhaustion and mind-numbing tediousness?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I tell you what, Stan, I this has been a really, I mean, if I'm going to be vulnerable here, this has been a really big struggle for me. Um, I I had lunch with a good friend of mine here a while ago that's been really helpful to me through this entire process. And, it was interesting. He's like, he's like, I went through this a couple of years ago. Him and I are about the same age. We came out of the same industry. I was like the chief procurement guy, and he was like the CFO. So we've been in similar companies along this process. Um, and he's like, out of everybody I know, he was like, you were the last person I ever thought I would see this happen to. And so he's like, I know it's going to be extremely hard. And it's just, like I said, it has been really hard for me. And what I mentioned earlier, I can't remember the guy's name who was here a while ago, but talked about how work was a lot of his identity. I can't remember his name, Steve, but he was the one that talked about that identity issue. And as well as going through and losing a job, he also went through a divorce in that time frame. And yeah, I think, Stan, for me, it's been trying to stay after it, right? So I've been trying to always keep the funnel going. Even now that I have this offer, I actually haven't stopped keeping the funnel going, right? Because I don't know for sure if this is the long-term job that I want. I know it's good and it may be, but I don't know if it will be. Um, so, keeping the funnel going and keeping finding jobs, I've tried to stay on top of that. I I like to exercise and stay fit, so I've tried to keep that same process going while I've been in this. Um, there for a while, I was doing a lot of kind of home projects for my wife. It was like all these things that had been built up over the years. It's like, here's a list of things that would be nice to be done. So I stayed busy doing some of that as well. I think the other thing that's been helpful for me was that there's a company out of the UK called Positive Purchasing that I've known for 25 years that provides this training to companies around negotiation, category management, and supplier relationship management. And having that relationship with them to be able to talk to while I was going through this process, and then having them want me to go do training for them, has been able to help me stay kind of sharp and keep me kind of engaged. Even though I haven't made a ton of money doing it, it has been some money coming in. And again, like I said, it's kind of kept me sort of sharp and like having to be ready, you know. Um, I think that's been helpful. And then, I think I've been really lucky just to have a lot of really great people around me that have, there's probably been 15, 20 people that are like really on my side that I've worked with and for and with over the years that, are texting me and calling me every week and checking in and how are you doing? What do you need? Can I help you? That kind of a thing. So that's been really helpful as well.
Yeah, great advice. Like in my experience, just like volunteering, just keeping active, busy, and going for walks. It's just like you wouldn't think it's helpful, but it really is. So thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you.
I think it was Dave Peterson who went back to
Yeah,
Western Governors. Like that was it. Next up
that
is
was the
Tammy.
one.
Oops. There we go. Next up is Tammy.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Hi, Kevin. I'm so freaking excited for you.
Thank you.
Finally, I can see that you've worked so, I've never seen anyone work so hard before. I guess I want to know how you're approaching the management to get them to be more interested in you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I was telling my wife this the other day. It seems like sometimes the interviews that I prepare for the least go the best. Crazy as that may be at sometimes. I think, some jobs that I really, really, really wanted there. I mean, the money was just fantastic and the role was a high level role and I just felt like I'm going to do anything and everything possible to be ready and prepared. And sometimes I wonder if I got into a little bit of a mode of being over prepared and being just got myself so overworked up of an interview coming that I didn't do as well. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, just try to be real, try to be myself. Um, in some cases, I can't remember Steve who the runner was, the motivational speaker that came. I tried to be vulnerable in
Brad
some
Barton.
cases. Yeah, he talked about being vulnerable, being real. I've tried to be that. Um, um, I don't know. I think that's all I can really say. But like I said, I have done a lot of research on all the people that I interview, especially when I get higher up the chain, on who they are. I've actually used AI to help me prepare differently, right? So the interview with somebody that's like a president of the division is a lot different than the interview with, the recruiter in the beginning. And I found it interesting in a couple of those, like one of them I had for this company that I got the offer for. We had like 10 to 15 minutes conversation about kind of the job and what he was looking for. And then he talked to me like for 15 minutes about like, hey, what do you like to do outside of work? And we had this kind of 15-minute conversation. I got off the phone and I was like, man, I don't know what's going to happen with this one. I have no idea because that was kind of interesting. But I think he just felt very comfortable about my experience and background and was looking much more for what's the culture fit look like. Is this like someone that I can work with?
Yeah, because I think my last interview I went to, the over the phone initial interview went really well, but I think when they actually see me, it doesn't go so well. Um, so I'm not quite sure how to get over that obstacle.
Yeah. Almost it's been interesting. That's another thing I found interesting. Most of my interviews, it seems like sometimes the initial interview will be a phone call, it's just the recruiter. Then it quickly goes to a virtual, almost all virtual interviews I've had. I've noticed that a couple companies, it's been interesting. I get on the interview and they don't come on video, but they want you to be on video.
Right.
And then anything that's gotten to a certain level, it's all been kind of video, right? But yeah, that's kind of interesting at times when you get on there and you're on video and they're not.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Okay, Kevin, well, good luck.
Thank you, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. We're wrapping up here slowly. Looking at my screen here. Next up is Sean.
I guess my question, because I'm kind of new here, how much time did you spend um putting in for jobs per day? If you're going through that many jobs and that many interviews, how much time a day are you spending to the job search?
Yeah, it kind of varied from week to week. When I first got let go, I was so shocked and upset and frustrated by it. I was almost like an obsession of mine. Like I was like the first couple of weeks, I mean, I was spending 10, 12, 14 hours a day just doing anything and everything I could trying to find opportunities. When this first happened, my big goal was that I was going to get a job before my severance ran out, which was in the end of November. It was like that, I was like dead set on making that happen. And then, I got in the end of November and it wasn't happening, and I got really, really frustrated. But it kind of depended on the week, but I'd spend most days like 4 to 6 hours just searching and looking and customizing resumes, etc. Um, and then I would spend, I was trying to spend a lot of time talking to people. So I had a list of probably like 80 to 100 people that I'd sort of targeted as, connections that I could reach out and have conversations with. And then I kept them like on a spreadsheet. And then if they were like ongoing where I was going to continue to connect with them, I'd make a note of that. If they were like, kind of a one and done, I don't see the benefit in trying to keep that going, or they didn't seem like they wanted to help or whatever, then I would kind of mark that. So between just searching, interviewing, and talking to people, Steve takes an accountability of this every week. And I was spending almost full time, like a normal job that I was, working at doing that.
Gotcha.
I'm
Okay.
not saying you have to do that, but I was every week I was trying to apply for like anywhere from 4 to 8 jobs, and I was only applying for ones that mostly really wanted to go after. I wasn't just applying to apply. Again, kind of once you get that cadence going with interviews, it's kind of like, 25, 30 hours is about the least, at least in my mind, that I could spend without, just trying to stay on top of it.
Sure. I think that was my only question, but congratulations.
Thanks, Sean. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Rick Farrell. Where's Rick? Are you there, Rick? All right. Jeff, you joined late. I'm gonna go to Max real quick. Max is gonna speak next, but Max, do you have any questions? Even though, you're gonna be sharing your story, which will be different.
I guess out of the whole process, when it really came down to it, end of day, what have you learned going forward? I guess what is like the one good experience you could take out of it, or that it has taught you?
Well, I have learned that this really sucks to be in this
Yeah.
position. And I'll do everything I can to make it so it doesn't happen again. Um, yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned is that there are a couple things. Companies don't really care about you, even though you think that they do. So, my whole view that's going to be a lot different than what it has been in the past. Um, and then for me, I think personally, it was just um, I'm going to try really hard to not have my identity so tied to my role, my title, what I did, where I was at. And, I got 8 or 10 more years at the most to work. And, my outlook on it at this point is becoming very much more selfish around
Yeah.
just what do I need to get there. And taking care of myself and my family and not getting, again, like I said, not getting so wrapped up in the identity of work. I mean, I do a lot of stuff outside of work. I have a lot of hobbies and things that I really like, and I found that, that and my family, and that's just so much more important than a job. So, um, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Max. Jeff, you were here a little bit late. Did you hear any of this, and do you have any questions?
No questions. I think I'm kind of in the same boat, just navigating this. What intrigues me a little bit is your use of AI for your resume building, your preparation for interviews and stuff like that. And this is in regards to, I just had finished a SHRM certification with AI plus HI, and just kind of seeing as an applicant how this is helping you. And then I guess on the back end for hiring managers, where I'm wanting to get into human resource and training development, stuff like that, and implement some of these things that I've learned through my management degree or human resource management degree through WGU, how we can make the process better as I try to find positions and opportunities in HR using this certification that I just got.
Yeah, I would say for me, there's no way I could have navigated this without a subscription to ChatGPT for me. There's no way. There's no way I would have been able to navigate this the last few months.
How have you seen it from the hiring managers and stuff like that, as the way they're using it, AI to interact with you? I know one thing you had mentioned that kind of is alarming to me as one trying to get into HR is they're asking you to hop on a webcam or Zoom call, WebEx, and they're not reciprocating with that. And as somebody that wears hearing aids, request this through WGU school and different opportunities to see the nonverbal cues. It's kind of a red flag for me as an HR manager that they're not willing to allow you to see them. And I know a lot of the interviews are going to AI, that there's really nobody there. And then they're just screening it later with video.
Yeah,
I never had that situation, but I did, like I said, I did have a few where they just didn't come on. I had actually one that was interesting. He came on and he said, "I'm not going to be on camera, but I will come on camera towards the end." And then they actually, so like we asked me all the questions, and at the end, when I started to have questions, he came on video, which I thought was strange.
Because I guess as an interviewer, and I don't know, I did 20 years retail management for Associated Foods, and just recently went to WGU, but that's kind of a red flag. It's like they don't even care or invested in you, because you can't, not seeing them, you can't pivot because of nonverbal cues and actions that they're having on the other end of the thing. You're just running, hoping that they're interacting or however that sets up, and you make a good mark, but they're not allowing you to pivot or change or do anything because it's not reciprocated on their end. And I understand they're the hiring managers too, but in the same aspect, how can you adapt on the job? Or how can you do that if they're not willing to give you feedback at the start of the process or allow you to
Well, sometimes
work
people
with that
forget that
feedback?
the interview is a two-way process, and it's a little bit different when you don't have a job. You're a lot more desperate just to take anything. But, I always look at the interviewing process as not just they're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them.
Yeah.
And those people that wouldn't come on video, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be thrilled about taking that job.
Have you voiced that to those that have interviewed you, just out of
No,
curiosity?
no, but
I know.
again, but the thing is, and again, I would say for the ones that did it, that was like the very first, it was usually typically the recruiter interview. Once I got past them, they were all on video.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I think I got everybody here. Kevin, thank you today for coming and for sharing.
Thank you.
And this is Kevin Williams sharing his job search story. Everybody, big round of applause for Kevin.
Hey,
All
thanks, Steve. And just, a heads up, I'll be around. I probably won't be attending again. I'm gonna have to drop off because I actually have an interview at 11. But if you have my information, if anybody has any questions or I can help in any way with things that I've done, tips or tricks or whatever, and somebody wants to reach out individually, I'm happy to do that. Happy to have that conversation.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.